Hey everyone, it's Lars here, and welcome back to Virtual Paddock. Back in November of last year, I made a video about my top 5 favorite tracks. Now, when making that list, it was actually kinda tricky to choose the tracks. I had a bunch of circuits that I considered putting on that didn't make it in the end, but probably would be in the top 10. And oftentimes, it's only because of one or two corners that just make me like the track a little less. So for today, I'm gonna tell you about the, in my opinion, top 5 worst corners on otherwise great tracks. Number 5 is Forrest Elbow at Bathurst. Mount Panorama is one of my all-time favorite tracks, especially with the S's. Going from Skyline down through the Dipper. It's definitely one of the trickiest, but also one of the most exciting sections in all of racing, in my opinion. And I don't even think that Forrest Elbow is a bad corner, but it's definitely my least favorite at Mount Panorama, simply because it can be extremely frustrating. The braking zone is very steeply downhill, really tricky to figure out the right amount of pressure. And if it's just a bit too much, you understeer off and lose lots of time all the way down Conrad Straight. And for me, I'm very often still struggling with developing good feel on the brakes. So honestly, it's mainly that I don't like this corner, simply because I'm bad at it. Number 4 is Luffield at Silverstone. Silverstone is a great track, really fast. Some of the sections are downright iconic, such as Cobbs or Maggots and Beckett's. But a bit before Cobbs, there's one corner that I despise, and it's Luffield. A 180-degree-ish right-hander, slow to medium speed, and it just drags on for ages. And especially if you're on a single screen like me, it's just so awkward to try to find the right moment to get back on the throttle. So it's very easy to do it too early and then run wide at the exit. I'd even say that I just don't like that type of corner at all. Like, also the final corner at Hungaroring is very similar. But for Silverstone, I actually really like the track that Silverstone is. And Luffield just very slightly ruins it for me. At number 3, I've got the Barcelona Chicane. This one was probably fairly obvious. I do generally like the circuit to Barcelona Catalunya, but the chicane just breaks the flow. And especially if you look at why it was added in the first place, to help overtaking, it did exactly, nothing. Now, my favorite layout of Barcelona was actually the one used from 2004 to 2006. So, with a slower version of turn 10 already, but still without the chicane. And that layout also makes the penultimate corner a lot more enjoyable, simply because it's faster. Now, as far as I've heard, they're actually looking at eliminating the chicane again for the future, for F1. And let's hope for that. Make the last sector great again. Number 2 is Arnage corner at Le Mans. The Circuit de la Sarthe is fantastic. 13 kilometers, I love it at full throttle. Bunch of hard braking zones, but also a bunch of fast corners. And then there's Arnage. Basically just your average 90-degree slow right-hander, but it just sits in such an awkward spot. Now, the braking zone to the previous corner, Indianapolis, is actually really interesting, because you're slowing down through that right-hand kink. Then Indianapolis itself is a slightly banked left-hander, usually around 3rd gear, then a tiny straight before a very awkward braking zone. And that's my problem with Arnage, the braking zone. You don't really pick up a lot of speed after Indianapolis, so you can brake later than for most slow corners, but also not as hard. and it's very tricky to judge properly. Super easy to lock up. And it's usually the one corner that screws up an otherwise decent lap for me. And finally, at number 1 is the current iteration of the bus stop chicane at Spa. Spa is a classic. And just like many others, I love fast and flowing circuits with a good amount of elevation change. But there's just one problem with the current layout of Spa. It's right at the end of the lap. The current bus stop chicane is just way too clumsy. It actually to me feels too big to be a proper chicane, and it absolutely doesn't fit the flow of the circuit. In my opinion, the best layout of Spa was pre-2004. Then they changed the layout for 2004 to where it was not as bad as today, but essentially a bigger and clumsier version of the original bus stop. But yeah, I like the original one best. Unfortunately, it's really hard to find like an early 2000s version of Spa. I do have a 1988 version in Assetto Corsa, and there's a 93 version for AMS2. But I wouldn't mind having an early 2000s version, simply because that's the time I really got into racing. Now, I still enjoy the circuit overall in its present day layout, but I'd like it even more if we still had the old bus stop. Alright, so those are my least favorite corners on tracks that I otherwise enjoy. Not necessarily all bad corners ruining the circuit. For a lot of these, it's just that I'm bad at that particular corner. But it's the way I feel about those corners. Maybe I just need to practice more. But let me know what your least favorite corners are. Anyway, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and you want to see more content like this, be sure to click like and subscribe. So, till next time, use the downforce, and see you soon.